Hey everybody, it's Surfing Pichu. Today I wanted to talk about Gen 9 a little bit. I've been asked about it a couple of times to talk about it on stream, and it seems like a lot of you want to hear my thoughts on it, so here we go. Generally, I think it looks good. I feel like every single time I've been asked about this on stream, I've basically said, yeah, it looks good. It looks like it's going to be a good game. It's really hard for me to get in depth about it because not a whole lot of info has been released on it just yet. I like the designs. I think Sprigatito and Fuecoco look adorable. I love all of the other Pokemon in the world that they've shown us so far. I think the world itself looks really, really good. I think the thing that I'm the most excited about, though, about the new games, is definitely the open world gameplay. I love the taste of it that we got in Legends Arceus. I think it is absolutely the correct way, the correct direction for us to be going in Pokemon in general. And I'm looking forward to seeing a whole lot more of that. But as I've been thinking about it, I've also been thinking that this is something that we've actually seen before. And we've seen Pokemon open world games before, not so much in the main series, but in Fangames. Fangames have actually already done the open world gameplay and have done it pretty well. I think that's one of the things that actually makes me more excited for Scarlet and Violet. It's, the fact that I already know that it's something that'll work really well for the Pokemon format. Crystal Clear and Pokemon Wilds being great examples of that. So, today I wanted to talk a little bit about some other features that I think would really benefit the Pokemon mainline games, especially other features from fan games that show up in Pokemon fan games. These are things I really have my fingers crossed that'll also make an appearance in some of the new games. Some of these things are going to be things that we've already seen in Pokemon Legends Arceus or in other spin-off games, but so far we haven't gotten them in a main title from the series yet. It hasn't been in a real generation Pokemon game yet. So this is kind of my wish list. This is going to be my top 5 things from other fan games that I would love to see in a mainline game. Number 5 spot on my list is the thing that I think is the most likely to show up in the next game because it's already been in Pokemon Legends Arceus, and that is instant nicknaming from the start menu. I think that there's, again, a pretty solid chance that we're going to see this anyway. We've already seen it in the latest spin-off game. I think that just about everybody's reception to this change has been positive. I don't think that there's anybody in any community that I've seen who has been bemoaning the loss of the name raider. Now, of course, this is a really small change, but I think it's something that improves quality of life so much that there's just no reason not to include it. Fangames that have included this feature so far, the first time I saw it I think was in Pokemon Infinite Fusion, but I know that it's been in Empyrean, it's been in Pokemon Rejuvenation, and even Pokemon Reborn has added instant nicknaming in its latest update. So I think that there is basically no excuse now for Game Freak not to give it to us. Sorry, Name Raider, I'm sure that you will be missed. I'm sure that there's somebody out there who will miss being told that their nickname is subpar and could be better. But for right now, I think it is time for us to bid you farewell. So that's my number 5 pick. Let us nickname right from the start menu. Number 4 is another entry that I'm a little bit on the fence about, but I think that in the end, it would come out as a net positive for the series overall. And that is the addition of quest logs. Now, this is another thing that did technically make a debut in Pokemon Legends Arceus, so it's not something that we are 100% unfamiliar with. It's not completely unfamiliar territory. This is what I'm not as sure if it's going to show up in the mainline games or not. Technically, Pokemon has always had side quests. You've been able to get the Mimic TM from the Copycat in Saffron City by giving her a Pokédoll, or getting Kenya in Pokemon Crystal and then never giving her back. But Pokemon Legends Arceus giving us a quest log I think was a necessity just because of the sheer number of quests that you had to do in that game. And I think that the number of side quests added an extra layer of depth into the game that we didn't get to see in a lot of other Pokemon experiences. It gave us a reason to really try to interact with and explore the entirety of every map. So I think that it would be a good idea to have something like that in an open world Pokemon game if it's going to be a mainline game as well. Now, fan games have been including quest logs more and more. Older fan games, you very, very rarely saw any kind of quest log given to you. Pokemon Reborn still does not really have one, and probably doesn't really need one. I get lost every so often in that game, but that's mostly my fault. Games that have included them, though, are things, again, like Pokemon Infinite Fusion, having a pretty robust quest log and a series of rewards that you could get from doing them. Pokemon Rejuvenation even has a quest board with a point system that allows you to cash in points for extra Pokemon that you wouldn't be able to get so early in the game. They also let you trade in points for battle items, which is really, really helpful in a game that's that difficult. I will admit that for most mainline Pokemon games, the main attraction is still going to be the gym challenge, and that's probably the thing that they should spend most of their time focusing on. I would hate to have a Pokemon game that was all just a bunch of little side quests and mini quests that didn't really lead to anything if the core gameplay wasn't also really fantastic. So I think that it's more likely going to be an aside thing rather than the main meat of what brings people into the game series. But I also think that having a robust series of side quests allows you to incentivize players to explore the world more and makes the world feel more lived in. And overall, I think that that's something that mainline Pokemon games have been lacking a little bit in the present, in the last few installments, and is something that I would love to see more of. Sometimes it's fun to just be able to talk to a person, see what their issues are, and get a little window into what everyday life must be like in this region. I think that including something like that could be a really, really good way to flesh out the gameplay, to flesh out the world that they're trying to get us to live in for the next generation, and something that I think would be, in most players' minds, a welcome addition to the series. So that is going to be my number 4 pick, adding in a quest log for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Number 3 is starting to get into the nitty-gritty. This is something that is, I think, more on my radar than a lot of other people, but I think it could be a nice thing to have either way. EV and IV displays are already kind of in the game. You can go to your start menu and you've got a little graph that gives you an approximate idea of what your IVs are, and once you unlock the Raider at the end of the game, you can also go through and figure out approximately what your IVs are for your Pokemon. They have gotten a lot better about doing this in the last couple of generations. I think the difference between Gen 6 and Gen 8 already is absolutely astronomical. Not having to go through and scroll through a lot of arbitrary text just to see what your IV spread is and how many 31s you have finally managed to get. However, this can be done better. And it's been done better in pretty much every fan game I have played for at least the last couple of years. The EV and IV display in fan games is just better. They give you an exact number of what your EVs are, they give you an exact number of what your Pokemon's IVs are, and they generally will give you this information right from the very beginning of the game. You get your starter, you're able to immediately jump into the start menu, check for your IVs and for a hidden ability, if the game allows you to get them, and that's usually about it. You're off to the races. Now, I know some people who actually would not want to see that in the game. People who either know that they would get way too obsessive about it, would like have to restart until they got a Pokemon with good IVs. I know that already there are some people who get caught up on natures and like have to reset until they have a Pokemon starter with a good nature before they can play through the rest of the game, and how it can actually make the game a little bit harder to get through just because, you know, that perfectionism kind of sets in and you have to have everything just so. I understand that entirely. But I think it's something that can be compromised on. Maybe a toggle in the menu that allows you to turn on and off numeral displays for EVs and IVs. It would be such a simple thing to implement, though, and it's something that has boggled my mind that we are still having to check these approximations and wait so long in the game to be able to see things like your EVs and IVs when it has become such an integral part of the Pokemon experience. I know that the last few spin-off games have actually been moving us further and further in the direction of a new system altogether. Legends Arceus and the Let's Go games didn't feature EVs and IVs at all, but I would also anticipate that the next couple of generation games are probably going to keep EVs and IVs for this foreseeable future. And if that's going to be the case, I don't see any reason why we shouldn't make it as easy a deal as possible, as effortless as possible, for us to figure out what those are and be able to make good choices in our team building based on all of the information that we've got. As far as I'm concerned, the Pokemon community is going to figure out how to do this anyway. I remember back in Generation 4 keeping track of EVs with a paper and pencil. I remember all the way back in Generation 2, you used to be able to plug your stats into a calculator to figure out what your DVs were. So I have no doubt in my mind that Pokemon fans are going to figure out these numbers somehow anyway. We love math, you know that. But for those of us who love the accessibility and who love the ease of being able to just pop open a menu and see what our exact EVs and IVs are, I think that having those displays would be the biggest gift that Game Freak could give us, especially for someone who, like me, really does like the competitive Pokemon aspect. I love breeding, I love building interesting and unique sets, and it has always kind of irked me that even though I can see the approximation of my Pokemon's EVs, I will never know precisely what those numbers are, especially if I haven't written down my EVs for that particular Pokemon. So, it's a quality of life thing. And is it a very small quality of life thing? Is this another kind of nitpicky thing to ask for? Yeah, I admit that. I admit that entirely. It's pretty nitpicky. But I would still love to have it. So that's my number 3 pick. EV and IV displays that use numbers instead of texts and approximations. My second pick might be something that might be a little bit more controversial, but it's something that I would like to see in the games nonetheless, and that is the ability to pick your character's styles and customization options without being tied to whether you've got a boy or girl model in the game. This is something that I will admit has come up a whole lot more in games like Animal Crossing and The Sims, in life game style games rather than in Pokemon, but in the last couple of years, Pokemon has become a whole lot more into its character customization. It's giving you a lot more options, but those options have always still been tied to whether your character has a boy or a girl model. What I would like to see is a little bit more customization on both ends. Allow me to pick whatever hairstyle I want and whatever clothing style I want, whether my character is a boy or girl in the game. This, I think, would be a good thing to add in for a couple of reasons. First of all, it opens up customization a whole lot. I can't tell you how much it stinks to want to choose a boy character only to look through the clothing options and the hairstyle options and think, well, you know, none of these really fit my style. None of these really fit the character that I want to build in this, and I'm gonna have to go with a girl model anyway, even though the character that I'm trying to build, I would like to be a boy character. Fangames are, of course, a whole lot less customizable, but they are also very, very good at providing you options wherever they are able to give you them. So, it's always been kind of nice to see that in a lot of fan games you're able to choose the look of your avatar and choose the pronouns that your character uses separately, instead of having them tied to the model that you choose. I think that this would be a really good customization option to add into the mainline Pokemon games as well. Now, do I think this is something that is going to show up? I am really not sure. It's something that's been on my wish list. I would love to have a little bit more freedom when I am making my characters. I would love to be able to mix and match parts from the boy and girl catalogs a whole lot more freely. There's always been at least 1 or 2 parts from the boy catalog that I would love to be able to give my girl avatar that I'm just not able to, and that always has kind of irked me a little bit. I also think that this would be a great way to add a little bit of representation for our non-binary friends out there who want to have their character model reflect themselves a little bit more precisely. Pokemon fan games are also pretty good at giving trainers a gender-neutral option if they should so choose it. That's something I'm not sure if we would see in a mainline Pokemon game or not, although I would be the first to welcome it if we did. But even so, extra customization and the ability to customize your character, regardless of whether they are a boy or a girl at the start of the game, I think would be a really, really welcome addition to the new Pokemon games. And while I can't say for sure how likely it is that we'll see this, it is going to be my number 2 pick for the thing that I would like to see in the next mainline Pokemon game. And my number 1 pick. This is something I've talked about a whole lot in the past, especially on stream, so if people are not surprised at all to hear that this is my number 1, I'm also not surprised by it. But it's something that I have been clamoring for a really, really long time. Something that fan games have always been really, really good at implementing, and that I have no idea why we haven't seen this in a mainline Pokemon game, or even in the spin-off games for the most part. And that would be a difficulty setting. Technically, we have seen these in one mainline Pokemon game, that being Black and White 2, but they are version exclusive. You can only get the hard mode if you're playing Pokemon Black, otherwise Pokemon White 2 will give you an easy mode upon completion of the game. But the caveat to these 2 difficulty settings is that you have to beat the entire game normally first in order to unlock the other difficulty, which to me makes very, very little sense, especially in a game that is so about customization, that is so about competitive battling, and that has so much stuff in it to do. Pokemon Black and White 2, by the way, being fantastic games. I have no idea why they made this choice. It's baffling to me. What also baffles me is why it has not shown up in another Pokemon game since. Since after Gen 5 was done, Gen 6 was probably the game that needed a difficulty setting the most. The regular difficulty of Pokemon X and Y was ridiculously low. You could basically beat the entire game with 1 or 2 Pokemon. You never had to fight a trainer that had a team of more than 3 before you got to the Elite Four, and even once you faced the Elite Four, you didn't even have to fight a full team against the champion. Incredible. Gen 7 and Gen 8 have been a little bit better about the difficulty. I would say that Gen 7 is probably the harder of the 3 newer mainline games that we've had so far. Gen 7 really beefing things up with the Ultra Beasts that we saw in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. However, this doesn't save the games from feeling very hand-holdy and just a little bit too easy. Now, I know that this is partially because the general target audience for Pokemon games is pretty young, and I would never want to say that Pokemon games should be harder in order to lock out that younger generation. I think that everybody should be able to access these games and play them as they want. And that is why having difficulty settings, I think, is such a good direction for the series to step in. Having the flexibility to still be marketable towards a younger audience while also being able to give a little bit of challenge for people who are more seasoned veterans of the series, I think is a good compromise. And I think it speaks volumes that Pokemon has remained such a popular series among young and old players alike, that it shows that there is a market for a more difficult Pokemon game in general. Fangames, of course, very, very clearly demonstrate this. From games like Pokemon Insurgents being a little bit darker and much, much harder than your usual mainline game, to games like Reborn that take challenge to an entirely different level. All of these games now have difficulty settings implemented in one way or another. Most notably Pokemon's Rejuvenation, Pokemon Insurgents, Pokemon Xenoverse, even Pokemon Reborn has added in a password system that allows you to tweak the difficulty settings of the game based on what IVs your opponent Pokemon are going to have, and giving you specific boosts and your opponent's specific debuffs, depending on how difficult you want the game. Now, I don't think that this needs to be done to the extreme. Some games like Pokemon Daybreak do take the hard mode very seriously, so in addition to making levels a little bit higher and tuning the Pokemon movesets a little bit more, they will also stop you from being able to use items in-game when you're in hard mode, and they will also cap your level. I don't think that that particularly needs to be done in a mainline game. But I think taking the Insurgents route of giving enemy trainers more or less Pokemon depending on what difficulty setting you're playing on, changing up movesets, changing up what Pokemon you'll have to face in specific key battles, and even raising or lowering the levels depending on how easy or how hard you have made the game, could be a really, really refreshing way to keep the game engaging for people who are a little bit more advanced and who want a little bit more of a challenge. This is probably my number one thing. This is the thing that I would buy a Pokemon game for immediately without any hesitation, no matter what other things I do or don't get from this list. I think that there are people out there who have been hungering for a really, truly difficult Pokemon game. And I think that this would be the way to give them that. To give them a Pokemon game that would actually give them that same challenge that they faced a long time ago, probably against Whitney's Miltank or something. Between pros and cons, I see very, very little downside to this. Sure, it would take a little bit more time to implement. They would have to go through and code different team selections for different trainers depending on the difficulty setting, but that is about all. That's really all that would need to happen, and it wouldn't have to be for every trainer anyway. Just some key battles, the gym leaders, the Elite Four. I think that that would be enough to pose a significant jump in challenge without needing to reprogram literally every trainer in the game. And having the option to have a more laid-back playthrough of the game, I think, is also a good option for people. In the end, I think that this is a win-win. Give us difficulty settings, allow the people who really want a challenge to be challenged by the game, and give people an easier setting if they just want to relax and enjoy the new setting. So that is going to be my number one pick, and this is the thing that I really, really would love to see. This would be my make or break. This, I think, would take this next game from being an 8 out of 10, looking pretty good, to looking absolutely fantastically excellent. I think that this is exactly the type of rejuvenation that the mainline Pokemon series has been aching for. And so that is my list. What did you guys think? This is the first of I hope more projects that are like this. So keep an eye out for more lists and just videos going over my thoughts on different things, and leave in the comments other things that you would like to see me talk about. I know that I am mostly a Twitch streamer, but I have always had some ideas floating up in the brain about different things that I'd like to talk to you guys about. So let me know if this video was enjoyable. Let me know what you thought of the list too. Are there any things from Fangames that you guys would like to see implemented in a mainline game that I didn't even talk about? Maybe there's a Fangame that I didn't even mention that has something completely mind-blowing in it that absolutely needs to be implemented as well. Anyway, you guys let me know down in the comments what you think. And remember to like and subscribe if you liked what you saw here today. Remember also, I am a streamer over on twitch.tv as well. I stream every Monday night, every Friday night, and every Saturday night at twitch.tv/surfingpichu. So if you want to see me in action doing challenge runs of Pokemon games, playing through some Pokemon fan games, or playing some JRPGs and horror RPGs as well. We do a lot of that. We also play some visual novels, so come and join us. It's a good time. You'll also get to see me play some flute and drink some hot sauce, which everybody loves to see. Anyway, this has been Surfing Pichu. Keep an eye out for more updates, and I'll see you guys next time.